you think there's a possibility that they could play an AI video that essentially, like, I don't know, like incites violence or riots, or they show people fighting in the streets, or like a civil war, or even a race thing, and it's broadcasted on major news networks, and it's not actually happening, but it causes a mass hysteria and causes people to actually, fight each other along those lines?
Yeah, no, it's a really cool question. It's sort of double speculation, but I like it. Obviously, I don't like the outcome. I like the thought experiment. I hope it doesn't happen, of course. But I do think that we're going to see a lot of interesting reckonings with AI. I try to put out some of the positive ones, but I think that there's probably going to be some negative ones, and that's a good example of a theoretical negative one. It's hard for me to sit and think about theoretical apocalypses. Somebody needs to do it, somebody who works for government, and somebody that has their best interests in mind. I think that's healthy. Again, I have a hard time conjuring like sick and twisted scenarios like that. I remember I have a funny story. So in real world, so 𝗫𝗫𝗀's sort of explaining this to a lot of people. Don't even know the first thing he's talking about, because a lot of people here aren't traders. So I'll take it a step back for a second. So the Greeks are in essence, different parameters of options that are very mathematical and difficult to understand. And I think it's really, I don't know 𝗫𝗫𝗀 well, but I've listened to a few of his spaces, and I'm sort of like surprised at how sort of intelligent he is about this stuff, because there's very few intelligent people on Twitter talking about investing. And the Greeks are hard to understand, but like a lot of options traders don't even bother understanding them. And I would say that you shouldn't trade any options until you fully understand at least the very least delta, but also the other Greeks as well. And again, most people don't want to understand partial derivatives of financial instruments, because they're partial derivatives of financial instruments. It's boring. It's much more exciting to sort of talk about 10xing your money or something like that. I think the golden rule of if it's too good to be true, it is. Not it probably is, but just simply it is. Trading options isn't any better than trading equities or anything else. If you're a good trader, you can make money over the long run. If you're a bad trader, you're going to lose money over the long run. And options are just one financial instrument. Because they're levered, you can lose 100% of your money. And sometimes you can make 5 or 10 or 20x your money, which is cool. Those times feel better than the losing 100% other times. But most options go out worthless, right? So you just have to be sober about that too. And again, 𝗫𝗫𝗀's really good point here that is not important for most people, but really important for a practitioner, is the reality is the option markets are large, but they're finite. So on expiry day, for example, options are really liquid and very volatile. Expiry day Friday was like the day every bank feared Martin Shkreli, because it was like one of the most toxic possible places to be, because I would ask bankers to commit capital in a time where they could lose or gain $5 million in 30 seconds. And I would try to trade options on expiry day of biotech stocks. And do you really want to be on the other side of that trade, like for a large size? No. And neither does the options market. So you can buy 500 contracts, maybe 100 contracts here, 500 contracts there. But if you want to trade 10,000 contracts of Amgen against me on expiry Friday, you're going to lose money. And it's going to be a really risky thing for you either way. And, bankers just want to stay away from that. So there's a lot of levels to this stuff. And once you start learning the basic level, you can go to learn the next level. And I just think stay curious and just try to learn as much as you can. I don't know about internships and all that. I think, you can find your own way one way or the other. Do you want to move on?
Your thoughts on Elon Musk's Twitter valuation, and if you would be interested in putting in a higher bid?
Yeah, I don't have the scratch to put in a higher bid for a $40 billion company. But it's the largest LBO of all time. Back before I went to prison, I actually did think about, could I buy 5% of Twitter, which still was, an enormous amount, close to $1 billion, right? So, really, really large amount of money to meme with. So it's the greatest meme of all time, and I definitely tip my hat to him. I still don't know if this deal will close or not. So I think that the problem isn't a higher bid. I think the problem is keeping this current bid, actually, intact, which I think most people assume it will not take place. So the deal will probably get restruck at a lower price. I think is the general consensus. So Twitter's very valuable. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And clearly, the management team has not taken most of the value and actually sort of created, a business that's worth the 40 billion, or could be worth, several times that, which I think is possible. So maybe Elon can do that, maybe he can't, but that's his bet, right? His bet is not Twitter as it exists. His bet is Twitter as it will be after he makes the adjustments that he's going to make. Those adjustments may hurt the business. They may help it dramatically. I don't think many adjustments could hurt it a lot, but again, you'd be surprised. So in his model, I think that's been leaked. He thinks that he can grow the cash flow quite a bit. I think Twitter has a lot of expenses that it doesn't need. And again, I have some inside scoop on that, but I think that you could bump cash flow by at least $1 billion doing some expense cutting. But ultimately, that only lasts for so long. I think if he does it, he'll make money. He'll restructure the company in a positive way. But I also think that he runs a risk of alienating users. He's obviously sort of a controversial guy. A lot of people don't like him, and he's sort of muddying the waters quite a bit with some of his political statements that he doesn't need to do. Well, that's Elon for you, right? He's marches to the beat of his own drum, and all the power to him. I hope he does it, and I hope he makes a ton of money doing it and makes it a better website. But we don't know what the future holds, neither does he, so we'll kind of see. I guess one person who keeps it honest is 𝗕𝗄𝗧 𝗦. So this is the woman that I guess I sort of dated while I was in prison. She was the journalist that actually broke the news about me, a lot of different pieces of news about me. And she is probably the one honest journalist that I've ever really met and known that would not compromise in any way, shape, or form for anyone. And that's one of the things that attracted me to her. She and I are not maybe the best couple in the world. We are just two very strong-minded people that a hard time, probably would have a really hard time being romantic, but nice woman who is really, really honest, almost to a fault, and just would never twist anything to please anybody. Like really strong journalist, the kind of journalist the world needs, quite frankly. And doesn't just simply flatter me, by the way. That's not something I would like or stand for. So she's truly honest. So if you want, I think she's writing a book. So if you want to read, I think she's got a Substack. So if you want to read that, that would probably be the one place I'd look at. If you want the real core, unvarnished truth, not just my spin on it, she's probably it. And again, you'll get good, bad, and ugly there. I mean, there's plenty of all of the above.
Where do you see yourself spending time with, amongst software, pharmaceutical industry, and finance? Curious.
Yeah, there's a lot of ground to cover. I mean, I wish I had more hours in a day, I would do everything, It's just the reality is you can't do everything. You have to pick one thing. And somebody asked me about success earlier and kind of what the key element to success is, and focus is that key element. So it's a really hard thing to do, I guess want to do everything and not have the time to even do one or two things. So you just have to prioritize what it is that you can really think you can be effective at. So for me, I mean, software is awesome, but again, what a big field, right? Where do you start? I like AI, I like crypto, I like Web3, I like financial software, whatever people call FinTech, but for me, it's a little different. But I think what I like. I like computational chemistry software and high performance computing software. I like cloud stuff. I mean, there's just no shortage of stuff I want to do. So, that's something that I'll have to figure out, I think. And by the way, I like pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. So it's, there's other things. Again, when you have a 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗰𝗲 of, just loving learning and loving everything, life in general, reading, how do you spend your time? It's I'd say it's a high class problem to have, because a lot of people are depressed and can't find anything to like. And I feel terrible for those people, because I have the opposite problem, and I'm just looking forward to doing everything, all the above. Just my biggest fear really is doing too much, because again, that focus thing is really crucial. I mean, starting 50 GitHub repos and not getting one of them to really do anything is clearly inferior to starting one that actually does something useful. So you have to find a way to be really productive and not go crazy, not having fun either. You have to find room for things that are, you find fun and satisfying. So.
If you have any good books that I should be reading.
Okay.
And thirdly, whether you think is the SEC the way to get financial statements still?
Yeah, you have to get financial statements from the SEC. It's the only real place to get them. SEC.gov versus some other interface, I don't think that matters. But
SEC.
Books, I'd say for finance, like the one book I strongly suggest is The Snowball by Alice Schroeder about Warren Buffett. That's probably the best book about finance, in my opinion, ever written, just because it covers the GOAT, the greatest of all time investor, Warren Buffett. Nobody's made more money than Warren Buffett over the long haul. He's obviously a little older than everybody else, so that kind of plays a part in it, but he also donated a lot of his money, so if you adjust for that, he'd be the richest man in the world today. He never got stock options, he's never gotten salary, he's never gotten anything that could have easily put him over the top and given him 100% of Berkshire Hathaway if he wanted. So if you take the market cap of Berkshire Hathaway, that's kind of what Warren Buffett's adjusted net worth would be, which is, I think around 400 or 500 billion. So just something to keep in mind as a successful person to emulate. You can't do better than Buffett. Let's move on.
Is sleep overrated or what?
Sleep is probably underrated. I'd say, sleep is like the most important thing we have as humans. Like, why is really interesting. There's a lot of literature. None of it really answers the question. There's something called sharp wave complexes and different synaptic pruning that some people think happens during sleep, but some really interesting thoughts about why we sleep and why we dream. One example is this idea that our neural network, right, is fantastic. I think everybody agrees that the brain is some kind of neural network. That's where we got the phrase from, right, in computer science. So straight from the brain. So anyway, the idea that we dream is really perplexing to people. Why would we need to dream? And I think one of the answers is it's a form of reinforcement learning. In a sense, the idea is that by having a function, or this module, maybe lack of a better term, where we dream these sort of semi-psychotic, right? If you think about what is a dream, it's sort of this like just random psychosis that takes place while we're asleep. Why is it happening? I think one theory that I read that I really liked is that it's in essence reinforcement learning for future potential endeavors or encounters. So by dreaming, we get to sample the possibilities of reality that haven't existed yet for us. For example, I used to have dreams of a scary monster chasing me, and they would race my heart, and I'd wake up in a sweat and so forth. And the point is that, that was in essence survival training. It improved my ability to survive. So if I saw some kind of scary monster, I'd run away pretty quickly. And I got to safely demo that experience in this dreamlike state. So one reasonable theory for the existence of dreams, quite advantageous from a Darwinian perspective, very much comports with our understanding of the mind, and sort of, kind of how and why dreams take place is something that's been very paradoxical. And of course, sleep is hopefully not just a dream theater, but also more other restorative things. For example, beta amyloid seems to be created during the day and removed during sleep. Of course, beta amyloid, as you all know, is also theorized to be the causative agent of Alzheimer's disease, which has to some extent been dispelled by various anti-amyloid therapies not working. Still not fully dispelled in my mind, but regardless, would be interesting to see. Again, if you see this study on PubMed, you'll see that just 24 hours of normal sleep will reduce beta amyloid deposits after, I believe, some amount of sleep deprivation. So when Bitcoin was at 30,000, I was talking to, there's like two of my best friends are like the best traders I know, and I self-select my friends based on their trading ability. Be nice to good traders, right? I was joking with Trader One, who I went to college with, that, you know, I wasn't joking, but I was observing when Bitcoin was at 30,000, the market was crapping out. I was like, wow, Bitcoin's hanging in like a champ. Like, this is so bullish. Why is Bitcoin not going down? It really should be the asset that's going down the most, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, we were just observing. And of course, we know what happened next. Bitcoin crashed. And investors kind of figured out that, you know, the market sort of figured out what I'm talking about. And I think the market knew it right away. But what's funny about investing is that one player in a market can distort that market. And if you need further evidence of this, look no further than the 𝗟𝗑𝗂𝗧 debacle with Bill Wong.
Celsius too.
There's a lot of, you know, examples of that debacle. So if one trader decides, listen, and this is probably exactly what happened at 30,000, there was $1 billion worth of supply, and that trader said, and it could have been a trader at a big hedge fund, it could have been a trader at a big asset allocator of any kind, and that trader basically said, listen, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. This is an opportunity. And that person basically stopped out the market for a few days and distorted it. Bitcoin without that trader would have gone to 20,000, but with that trader, and I'm oversimplifying it, it was more than $1 billion. It was, you know, there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. It could have been 4 people, it could have been whatever. But the point is that the market got distorted. Now, once that market distortion was gone, you know, that the market corrected itself to kind of its natural price. And so the point is, like, you can't necessarily infer anything from trading prices. A great trader can do so, but a great trader is only right 55% of the time, or sometimes even less than that. So to me, I don't know what the future of crypto is, right? Nobody does. If they did, they can make their bet and figure it out. And again, that trader will be right 55% of the time if they're a good trader. There's no trader that's right all the time. Such a beast has never been discovered. Maybe it's 𝗏𝗏𝗏. But jokes aside, so I wish I knew. I mean, obviously, I think that the more functional the software becomes, the more useful it is, the more valuable it'll be. I think we have serious problems and questions we have to sort of come to grips with on Bitcoin and its actual utility, especially vis-a-vis its energy consumption and the complexity of its sort of achieving consensus and the massive number of kind of computations done for very sort of like irrelevant, you know, a lot of irrelevant work being done for very like small amount of verification of transactions. So I think there are superior technologies, and I've talked earlier today about the paradox of, you know, maintaining sort of like a best crypto in the face of there being marginal improvements, which we've seen in Ethereum, right? Ethereum was a substantial improvement to Bitcoin, but now you have substantial improvements to Ethereum. So a currency can't last unless it becomes a standard, and that standard can't last unless it achieves all of its practical goals. So there's sort of this like circular problem where you're going to have like, you know, really big issues with getting a standard crypto. So that's sort of my 2 cents on that.
So do they own the rights to that now?
Nobody owns the rights to this album. It's a really funny thing. I was talking to some of the Wu-Tang guys the other day. Like, it's very ambiguous, and it's almost intentional who owns what here. So like at best there's a physical copy, which is worthless if there's digital copy, right? At least that's my supposition. If you think the physical copy is worth it, maybe you buy it for $4.5 million. I don't know, but I think it's hard to place a lot of value on a disk that carries a file. I think the file is the valuable part, right? Yeah, I had an $8 million judgment. I paid $6 million in cash, so I had $2 million left, and I had a big estate, so I didn't have to sell this thing. I had a lot of assets to choose from to pay that last $2 million. But while you owe all of your assets are encumbered. If you owe $2 million, you every dollar you have is encumbered until you pay the $2 million, which is how it should be, right? That's how debt works. So I had to choose from a lot of assets. Okay, well, how do I pay this? And I had this CD, kind of just wasting time buying the CD, and I basically said, listen, if I'm lucky, I could get $500,000 for this because it's really not worth very much. And my proxy for the $500,000, which is actually Wu-Tang's former record, how much it sold, was about $500,000 worth of record sales at $10 each. So I didn't think that I could get a whole lot for this record, but then the NFT boom came, and Bored Apes were going for millions and stuff like that. So I said, okay, now's the time to sell. So I reached out to some people, and I was able to get some interest in the album from some crypto people. So it was really fortuitous timing, and I timed the NFT sale well, but somebody like double-crossed me basically, and I was found myself selling this thing not to the intended purchaser, but to 𝗵𝗍𝗍. And again, 𝗵𝗍𝗍 now holds the CD for $4 million, which was an overpayment by far. I mean, my payment for 1.5 was an overpayment. But I had a lot of income that I could take a loss against, and that's not an excuse. But in the worst case, if the CD was only worth, let's say $1 million, 30% of that is refunded in a write-off, which isn't terrible. So I get a 30% discount on capital gains loss. So, call it 1 million purchase really instead of 1.5. I have a lot of art and collectibles, so, I kind of have that sort of knowledge of that space. But anyway, what happened, and, again, I don't think 𝗵𝗍𝗍 will even acknowledge my existence for some reason, even though I've played the album live and stuff like that. I think they're still in the state of denial that they actually didn't do any due diligence on the purchase of the album.
And they just bought that?
Yeah,
okay.
Even not trying to figure out if there was any physical or digital alternative. And one guy from Uniswap was like, haha, I listened to the album and you can't. And I press play and I'm like, you're talking about this album?